Hey there everyone, this week I've got a question from someone who says they went to a bank to get a business loan to buy a small business and the banker told them that the business is overpriced and his debt service coverage ratio isn't working. He wants to know if it makes sense to try other banks. Let's take a look at this scenario and tear things apart a little bit. Hey there everyone, it's David Barnett from davidcbarnett.com, the blog site and YouTube channel where I talk about buying and selling small businesses, deal making in general, managing small businesses, investing in small businesses, and anything else that people want to send me questions about. This week I got a question from someone who's been to a bank. The banker said, this doesn't make sense. Your debt service coverage ratio is off. First of all, what is a debt service coverage ratio? Well, it's how much cash is available at the end of the day based on the performance of the business. How much money do you have, and how much of that are you committing to give to the bank to repay the loan? So for example, if you have a profit at the end of the year of $1,000 and you've made commitments to pay the bank $500 in payments every year, then that would be a 50% coverage ratio, or sometimes expressed as a 2 to 1 equity coverage ratio, debt service coverage ratio, meaning that you have $2 of cash flow for every dollar that you are committing to your lenders. Now, when you're buying something like an apartment building, a good rule of thumb is that banks look for a 1.25 debt service coverage ratio, which means they want to see you have $1.25 of cash flow for every dollar you're committing to pay to the bank. Now, an apartment building is a very stable kind of investment because you might have an empty apartment 1 month, but it's probably very unlikely that the entire building will be empty in 1 month. So it's an even Steven cash flow. People do come and go, but generally that extra quarter that the bank is looking for is enough of a cushion to cover you from unforeseen expenses, emergency repairs, and those vacancies. Now, when it comes to a business, of course, business is far more risky than something like an apartment building. And I like to see people have a minimum of a 2 to 1 debt service coverage ratio, which means that basically you're only committing half of the cash you feel you're going to have to any kind of debt service. Now, when we're looking at small businesses, we often look at numbers like EBITDA cash flows or seller's discretionary earnings cash flows. And the problem with that is if you're looking at a business that's going to have a large debt attached to it, where principal payments are going to be in there, principal payments are not expenses. So a business can actually get into trouble if they only look at the EBITDA or cash flow numbers, because taxes can come into play and can create a big problem with your cash flow vis-a-vis the debt service. You can actually end up with a company that you might have a large profit at the end of the year. And if you're servicing a large debt like a mortgage, you can have a large profit, owe taxes, and have literally no cash. And when you say, where did my cash go? It went into the principal payments on something like the mortgage. So while there are different rules of thumb out there, you actually need to sit down and create a cash flow forecast and mix that with an accounting forecast where you actually try to estimate the amortization, depreciation, etc., so you can have an idea of what the tax bill is going to be, so you actually know how much cash is going to be available for debt service. Now, that gets complicated. If you want to learn more about this stuff, you should be doing my online course, Business Buyer Advantage, that you can get at businessbuyeradvantage.com. It's part of what we look at in that program. We actually follow a case study right through from searching for a business to setting up the financing, etc. The banker's comments, when he says that the business is overpriced because the debt service coverage ratio doesn't make sense, one of two things is, or maybe three things is happening. Number one, he's either dead on, he's correct. Number two, you aren't putting enough of your own money in, and that's extremely rare. Usually this only happens when you're actually trying to buy a business with none of your own money, in which case the banker wouldn't be talking about the debt service coverage ratio, he'd be talking about the debt to equity ratio. So he'd be saying simply, the bank doesn't like it because you're not putting enough of your own skin in the game. So in all likelihood, the banker's correct. And this is one of the things that happens all the time when we're looking at buying a small business, is that the sellers, for some reason, believe that the business is worth more than it really is. And it can be, for example, a mistake in the analysis of the business in demonstrating the cash flow. So here's what I mean. Oftentimes, if we have a business that also owns a piece of real estate, when I do an evaluation, I do a normalization process where I divide the real estate from the business, and we see what the business activity is independent from the real estate. If you don't do that properly, what ends up happening is the business looks much better than it really is, especially if the building's been paid for. And when you get to the bank, of course, the banker is going to look at, you're going to have a mortgage and you're going to have a business loan and maybe some equipment financing, etc. And the fact that it's overpriced because the normalization wasn't done will become evident when you start looking at the cash flow and the payments that are going to be required. So sometimes a deal can look good on paper at first glance, and then when you actually get into the nitty-gritty and the banker starts to make sure that the money's there to pay him, it will then become evident that there were problems in the initial presentation and setup by whoever is offering the business for sale. And if it's a qualified business broker, it's less likely that this could happen. But if it's a person just representing themselves or trying to find a buyer privately and they don't know what they're doing, then this kind of thing happens all the time. And unfortunately, it takes a couple of buyers like yourself to bring the seller through this process before they even start to be willing to recognize that they are asking an amount of money that is crazy for the business and the money that it provides. Anyway, I hope that helps. For those of you that are in Ontario, next week I'm in Toronto, May 10th. You can get your tickets on Eventbrite or going to davidcbarnett.com. And it's going to be an exciting night. I'm doing my 3-hour business buyer presentation. So if you're in that region and you want to come and meet me personally and see some of the stuff live, now's your chance to do it. And for those of you who love the content and are into podcasts or audio, I'm now porting over the audio of all of my videos onto SoundCloud, and I hope to have it actually set up as an iTunes podcast at some point in the near future, and I'll certainly let you guys know about that. Come on over to davidcbarnett.com, sign up for the email newsletter. Anything I do that is special or gives people special perks or bonuses goes to the email list only. So if you're a YouTube subscriber and you want to buy some of my programs or see if there's any deals from time to time, you need to be on the list, and you also find out about things like live events and new programs before everyone else does. Thanks. We'll see you next time, and I hope you're enjoying the content. Any questions, just put comments down below, and look forward to getting all the new questions that come in. Really, this is one of the best parts of what I do. Talk to you soon.